and I were asked to speak today was because of our participation in the BYR Buddhist Youth Retreat over the summer. And during this retreat, a group of high school students live in the Jodo Shinshu Center in Berkeley for a week, and we learned how to conduct a Jodo Shinshu service like this one. We learned how to chant properly, and we got to have discussions about Jodo Shinshu Buddhism with other BCA ministers. And one of the rules for the retreat that I was absolutely dreading going in was that we were not allowed to have access to cell phones, internet, TV, or radio for the entire week. There were actually 2 major earthquakes in Southern California during that week, and none of us had any idea until the car ride back. But because we didn't have these distractions at our fingertips constantly, we were forced to talk more to each other, pay attention to all the things that we were doing and saying, and our alone time that typically would have been spent on social media or watching Netflix, then became time to sit and contemplate our own feelings. And that is kind of what I want to talk about today, is self-reflection. So pretty early on in Dharma school or in the Metta Padma class, we are taught that selfishness is bad and that instead we should be thinking about others. And while that may be true, I think sometimes it's taken by a lot of people a little bit too literally. If we were completely focused on others and not at all on ourselves, there would not be any room for personal growth, and we wouldn't have that personal development happening at all. As I learned during my time at the summer retreat, it's more beneficial instead to find the middle path of self-awareness and self-reflection, and thinking about yourself enough to reflect on what is happening to you while not being overly selfish and self-absorbed. So now you may be thinking, well, what about living in the moment? You don't want to think too much about the past or about the future. And while living in the moment is important, it's also important to reflect on your past and learn from it in order to be the best person that you can be in the moment. If you had a greedy and selfish past, you're going to keep repeating the same actions unless you become aware of it and change yourself and learn from it. So I know that after the retreat, I've tried to incorporate self-reflection more often into my life, even if it's just a couple minutes per day. And no matter how dedicated to the Jodo Shinshu faith you are, whether you're a minister or a Dharma school student, or even if it's your first time visiting the temple, self-reflection is something simple that can be applied to your life every day without it seeming like too much of a big disturbance to your daily routine. In fact, I know someone who does a little bit of self-meditation and self-reflection every day while they're brushing their teeth. It's a set time of 2 minutes every morning and every night, and honestly, I'm usually just staring off into space when I brush my teeth, so it's much better use of those 2 minutes where you're not really doing anything else. It's a great example of how you can incorporate little bits of Jodo Shinshu practice into your day without taking any extra time. Because I get it, I go to school every day, do my homework, do my extracurriculars, I play sports, and I know how sometimes low priority that church and sometimes even my own happiness can seem compared to all these other big things. And it can be hard, but starting with little practices like self-reflection for even 2 to 3 minutes a day are helping me to become more self-aware of myself and to grow as a person, as well as to stay connected with my culture and my Buddhist background as I become an adult. Please join me in Gassho. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu.
Good morning, everyone. I'm usually pretty excited about sharing things that I'm really passionate about, like the Buddhist Youth Retreat or Peace on Your Wings. But today I'm a little nervous because I was asked to do a Dharma message. Now, I always love Dharma messages when somebody else gives them. All the reverends have so many great stories and make me think and reflect. But when I began to think about how Buddhist teachings have helped me most recently, the first thing that came to mind was group projects. I have a feeling that everyone already kind of knows what I'm talking about. Does anyone ever like doing group projects? School is trying to prepare us for work in the real world, just to do more group projects and build teamwork, but does it ever get better? Last fall, I got to take a really interesting ethnic studies course about Asian American studies, and we had lively discussions about our experience as Asian Americans. It was my favorite class, until the teacher mentioned that a group project was part of our final. Sheer panic. Everyone's eyes darted around, and we were all thinking the same thing. Who do I want in my group? Awful memories of past group project experiences flooded my head, and the teacher assigned our groups randomly. I told myself, great, now I'm gonna have to do the work all by myself again. We have probably all had these similar feelings about working with others before, the feelings of frustration and anger. Already expecting to do all the work myself, I got kind of into control mode. I selected the topic, Asian Americans in the media, and then I sorted out the 4 subtopics. When the other members weren't completing their part, I grew angrier. One guy stopped showing up to meetings and then stopped communicating with us altogether. Another guy started writing the PowerPoints about anime, which has nothing to do about Asian Americans. And the other girl, who was writing about Asian Americans in movies, had never even heard of Crazy Rich Asians. So I thought I just let it go. But then I realized I had some reflection to do about the frustration and anger so that I can better handle the next group project, because it's gonna happen whether I like it or not. When I reflect on an experience like that, sometimes it helps me to think about the Eightfold Path: right view, right thought, right speech, action, livelihood, effort, meditation, and right mindfulness. In this case, I think I did not have the right view and the right speech. I assumed that everybody else had the same understanding of the Asian American experience as me. The guy who dropped out probably had no idea what was going on or what we were talking about, and we should have all communicated better about whether anyone needed any assistance. As far as the anime and the movies, again, we should have discussed the topics together more instead of assuming that they should have known better. So next time, instead of getting angry and frustrated, I'm going to make sure that I do my part to have the right view, in that I need to understand somebody else's perspective. And I need to make sure that I communicate better and be understanding about somebody else's experience. Coincidentally, this past Monday, I attended Reverend Marvin's discussion on Jusei Gay, and he shared a very helpful article titled "The Pressing Need for Everyone to Quiet Their Egos." The ego is the aspect of the self that has an incessant need to see itself in a positive light. The self can be our greatest resource, but it can also be our darkest enemy. In dealing with group activities and even in our everyday lives, our ego leads us. When we quiet our ego, we are able to listen to others and to approach people with compassion. When we take the time to step back and evaluate a situation from someone else's point of view, we often find ourselves in more cooperative situations. When we come into group work with bitter thoughts, it makes the people around us just as bitter. When everyone is out for themselves and wants to complete their own goals, it is difficult to get anything done. A quiet ego can balance the interests of the self and others and guide us to be more self-aware. When we learn to quiet our egos and to think about the people around us, we often find ourselves in better and happier situations. So, next time, when you find yourself in that familiar, challenging situation of working in a group, a team, or partnership, maybe the Eightfold Path and quieting your ego will cross your mind. Please join me in Gasho. You never really know a person until you consider things from his point of view, until you climb into his skin and walk around in it. Harper Lee, To Kill a Mockingbird. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda, namanda.